Video number 19 in the Lessons in Logic playlist, and we're now in our, one, two, three, four, five, sixth video on categorical logic. And now we are switching. We are switching to the modern perspective for the rest of this unit. Now, I think I'm going to resist all urges to do any significant review and explain what I'm talking about. You can go back and see earlier videos to find out what I'm talking about. Let's see. I'm talking about video, it's probably video number 16, the question of existential import. Sorry, I'm just trying to get all my tabs straightened out and not be confused. And okay. The Aristotelian perspective has it that universal propositions are talking about things or implying that the things they're talking about exist. When I say, oh, guinea pigs are mammals, I'm implying that they're guinea pigs. The modern perspective says otherwise. The modern perspective says that although you may be thinking that guinea pigs exist, that's not implied by your sentence. That's just something else that's maybe conversationally implied when you're talking about guinea pigs. But the actual sentence of guinea pigs are mammals is not telling you guinea pigs exist and they're all mammals. It's just telling you if anything is a guinea pig, then it's a mammal. There's no such thing as a guinea pig that's not a mammal. That is the modern perspective on existential import. And now we are switching to the modern perspective for the rest of this unit. We did the Aristotelian perspective for a couple of videos on immediate inferences. Now we're switching to the modern perspective, and that's just how it's going to be. Now, for this video, I think we can say not that much. There's not that much to say. The modern perspective doesn't change much on obversion, conversion, contraposition. Again, I don't want to review everything here. Go back and watch the last video on obversion, conversion, contraposition. It's still valid whether you're a modern or not a modern, whether you're an Aristotelian or a modern on existential import. It's still valid to convert E and I, but not valid to convert A and O proposition. It's still valid to, let me say this differently, to conclude the contraposition of an O form proposition or the contraposition of an A form proposition or the conversion of an I form proposition or the conversion of an E form proposition. But it's not valid to conclude the conversion of an A or an O proposition from that A or O proposition, or to conclude the contraposition of an E proposition from an E proposition, or the contraposition of an I proposition from an I proposition. Those are not valid inferences. The same ones are valid or invalid, and obversions are valid regardless. These are totally unaffected by our switch to the modern perspective. The modern square of opposition, however, is much simpler. And since I'm not going to illustrate on the whiteboard, I suppose I'll just illustrate on Microsoft Paint. Let's see, the traditional square of opposition had a lot of stuff. You could conclude that if an A proposition is true, its corresponding I proposition is true, and if an I proposition is false, its corresponding A proposition is false, and so on. You had all those different arrows, 16 of them. Now we have only 8. I guess I'll go ahead and, I don't know, maybe I'll try a dotted line version this time. Yes, let's do gray and black, solid and dotted. So let's make a key first. Let's make a legend. Inference from a true proposition. We'll make inferences from true propositions solid lines. We'll make an inference from a false proposition, a dotted line. We'll make an inference to a true proposition, a black line, and an inference to a false proposition, a gray line. That's our plan. Okay, so an inference to a, oh goodness, what did I say? An inference from a true proposition will be solid. An inference from a false proposition will be dotted. That's not how we erase. There we go. There's my eraser. All right, inference from a true proposition will be solid. Inference from a false proposition will be dotted. And an inference to a true proposition will be black. And an inference to a false proposition will be gray. This is not perfect because it implies that inference from a true and inference to a true are both solid black. I'm sorry, I don't have time to sort this out. Or maybe I do. Maybe I have time to sort this out, but let's not make you watch it. And there we go. I'm pretty sure this is the same scheme I was doing a moment ago. An inference from a true to a true proposition would be solid black. Inference from a false to a false, dotted gray. And inference from a false to a true, solid gray. Inference from a true to a false, dotted black. And now on the traditional square of opposition, we would have this inference in black, A to I. And we'd have the reverse, a dotted inference, I to A. And we'd have dotted black, A to E, and vice versa, and so on. But now we're doing the modern square of opposition. On the modern square of opposition, things are much simpler. Actually, we don't have any solid blacks or dotted grays. On the modern square of opposition, all we have is dotted black and solid gray. And of course, they go both ways for a total of only 8 inferences. If A is true, its corresponding to O proposition is false, and vice versa. Wait, hang on, let me do the math. If A is true, its corresponding O is false, and vice versa. That's 1. No, we're doing dotted gray here. If A is false, its corresponding O proposition is true, and vice versa. If E is false, its corresponding I proposition is true, and vice versa. That's 1, 2, 3, 4. So yes, a total of 8. So now the other 4 are going to be our dotted blacks. If A is true, its corresponding O is false, and vice versa. And if E is true, its corresponding I is false, and vice versa. So this is all we have on the modern square of opposition, because we're not assuming that a universal proposition is implying that the things it's talking about even exist. So if an A proposition is true, for example, some guinea pigs are mammals, that doesn't tell us anything about whether guinea pigs exist. It just tells us if any guinea pigs exist, then they're mammals. There's no guinea pig that's not a mammal. So if it's true that there's no guinea pig that's not a mammal, it's false that some guinea pigs are mammals. Wait, if it's true that no guinea pig is not a mammal, then it's false that some guinea pig is not a mammal. That's the A to O inference with a dotted black. But it doesn't follow that any guinea pigs exist. It just means no guinea pigs are not mammals. And it doesn't imply that no guinea pigs are mammals is false, because if there are no guinea pigs, then it's true that no guinea pigs are mammals, and all guinea pigs are mammals. They're both true if there are no guinea pigs at all. Then it's true to say that if anything's a guinea pig, then it's a mammal, and if anything's a guinea pig, then it's not a mammal. If there's no guinea pigs, those are both true. That is how A and E propositions work on the modern square of opposition, and just not left with very many inferences. Now you are thinking, of course, guinea pigs exist, but remember, that's not even what we're talking about. We are talking about whether the form of a statement, the pattern of a statement, all S or P, in the pattern of a statement, no S or P, indicate that any S's even exist. Whether that's what this statement form means. The modern view is that it just doesn't mean that any of those things exist. It just means if any of them do exist, then for the A, they are P's, and for the E, they're not P's. So that is why Modern square wave opposition is much simpler. It's only got those 8 inferences. Only the contradictory relationships remain. Conversion by limitation and contraposition by limitation are not valid on the modern perspective, since they begin with the if A, then I, and the if E, then O implications. So if you go back and watch the former video on conversion, obversion, and contraposition, you'll find me saying that on the Aristotelian view, you can't convert an A. All guinea pigs are mammals, therefore all mammals are guinea pigs. But you can go from an A to an I. All guinea pigs are mammals, therefore some guinea pigs are mammals. Then you could convert that. You can always convert an I. All guinea pigs are mammals, therefore some guinea pigs are mammals, therefore some mammals are guinea pigs. All mammals are guinea pigs is not a valid inference from all guinea pigs are mammals, but all guinea pigs are mammals, therefore some mammals are guinea pigs is a totally valid inference on the modern view, on the Aristotelian view. But on the modern view, it's not a valid inference because you can't take that first step from A to I. All guinea pigs are mammals, therefore all mammals are guinea pigs, not valid. All guinea pigs are mammals, therefore some guinea pigs are mammals, not a valid inference on the modern view, because some guinea pigs are mammals implies that guinea pigs exist, and all guinea pigs are mammals does not imply that any exist. It's just telling you if they do exist, they're mammals. The modern perspective in general entails that it's a fallacy to assume that any category has any members in it without explicitly saying so. This is what we call the existential fallacy. Now, this doesn't have to mean all that much. As I said in the video on existential import, if you're using the modern perspective and you encounter an argument that contains a universal proposition that's about something that really does exist, and also assuming that whoever makes the argument is reasonably assuming that they exist, then just treat the argument as an enthymeme. An enthymeme is an argument with an unstated premise. And here the unstated premise is that some members of the class denoted by the subject term of the universal proposition really do exist. For example, the argument all cows are mammals, therefore some cows are mammals, should be treated as having an extra premise. It's technically not an immediate inference on the modern view. All cows are mammals and some cows exist, therefore some cows are mammals. Just add the extra premise stating that those things exist and everything's okay. In other words, if you're an Aristotelian, you can work with the modern view using this strategy, and this is what I strongly recommend for nearly everyone. For anyone moving on with this series of lessons in logic, and for nearly everyone in any logic class, because the modern proposition is almost certainly going to be assumed by your logic textbook. Let's see. But also, even if you're a modern, when you're working with someone who's talking about something that exists where everyone can reasonably be assumed to be assuming that those things exist, you know, all politicians are liars, therefore some liars are politicians. If someone makes that inference, don't say existential fallacy, you idiot. No, don't be a jerk, and don't be unreasonable. What you need to do is just recognize that they're reasonably assuming that politicians exist, and it's an unstated premise in their argument. So just make it stated. It's okay to leave some simple and obvious premises like guinea pigs and politicians exist unstated. But in a logic class, you have to draw out what's unstated sometimes, take the unstated premise and state it. That's all you have to do. So if you're a modern and you encounter an argument where someone's talking about something where we all know that that something exists and they don't say it exists, don't accuse them of a fallacy. Just realize they're doing an enthymeme. They have an argument with an unstated step. Draw out the unstated step. State when you formalize the argument, this thing exists, and then test the argument for validity accordingly. Now, this video was to switch to the modern perspective to say what needs to be said about immediate inferences on the modern perspective, which has now been said. And then we can review this in the last 3 videos with the following summary. Here are a whole ton of immediate inferences in modern logic, and I can tell you which ones are good and which are not. On the traditional square of opposition, traditional square, using the Aristotelian perspective. On existential import. If an A statement is true, its corresponding E statement is false. Its corresponding I statement is true. Its corresponding O statement is false. If an E statement is true, its corresponding A statement is false. Its corresponding I statement is false, and its corresponding O statement is true. If an I statement is true, we don't know whether the corresponding A statement is true or false, which means an inference from an I statement being true to anything about its corresponding A statement would be invalid. But if an I statement is true, its corresponding E statement is false, which would therefore be a valid inference from an I being true to an E being false. Since some guinea pigs are mammals, it is false that no guinea pigs are mammals. But if an I statement is true, we don't know whether the corresponding O statement is true or false, so such an inference would be invalid. If an O statement is true following the symmetry, its corresponding A statement is false, and we don't know whether its corresponding E or I statements are true or false. Now, for most of you, I think you just read over what I'm about to scroll down through here. Here's part of it. Pause the video, read over it. Here's some more. Pause the video, read over it. Here's some more. Pause the video, read over it. Here's some more. Pause the video, read over it. Here's some more. Pause the video, read over it. Here's some more. Pause the video, read over it. Now I'll just keep reading in case anyone who's visually impaired is watching this, but most of you don't need me to keep reading. How far did I get? If no statement is true, good. Now, if an A statement is false, we don't know whether its corresponding E or I statement is true or false, and its corresponding O statement can be validly inferred to be true. If an E statement is false, following the symmetry, we don't know whether its corresponding A or O propositions would be true or false, but its corresponding I is true. If an I statement is false, we can infer that its corresponding A is false, its corresponding E and O are true. If an O statement is false, then its corresponding A is true, its corresponding E is false, its corresponding I is true. Conversion and version and contraposition. The obversion of any true statement is true. The converse of a true E or I statement is true. The contraposition of a true E or I, the conversion of a true E or I statement is true, and you can make that inference validly. The contraposition of a true A or O is true, and you can make such an inference validly. The conversion of a true A or O, or the contraposition of a true E or I, is not necessarily true. You can't conclude it's false just because you can't confirm it's true. The important thing is that you can't confirm anything about the conversion of an A from the A alone, or about the conversion of an O from the O alone, or the contraposition of an E or an I from the E or the I alone. Those would be invalid inferences. The traditional square of opposition, however, does allow us to convert an A proposition by changing its quantity, or conversion by limitation, meaning you can go from all S or P to some P or S. You can think of this as two steps. I do think of it as two steps. It's clearer in my head that way. From all S or P to some S or P, that's the A to I inference on the traditional square of opposition, and then from some S or P to some P or S. Similarly, contraposition by limitation allows us to validly contrapose an E proposition by changing its quantity, but it's easier to think of it as two steps. It's from no S or P to some S or not P, and then from some S or not P to some non-P or not non-S. In other words, we go from the E proposition to its corresponding O proposition, and then, although we cannot contrapose the E proposition, we can contrapose the O proposition that corresponds to it, which O proposition is valid on the Aristotelian perspective. But on the modern square of opposition, we can't do that. On the modern square of opposition, you cannot convert by limitation in A or contrapose by limitation in E. On the modern square of opposition, now summarizing the modern square quickly, I don't even know if there's any need to read this. I guess I'll read it. If an A statement is true, its corresponding O is false, but we don't know anything else about the E or I, so such an inference about them would be invalid. If an E statement is true, its corresponding I is false, and its corresponding A and O, we don't know anything about them, don't infer anything about them, it's not valid. If an I statement is true, its corresponding E statement is false, and we don't know whether the corresponding A or O is true or false, and so don't infer anything about them, it's an invalid inference. If an O statement is true, its corresponding A statement is false, and we don't know anything about the corresponding E's and I's. If an A statement is false, its corresponding O statement is true, and we don't know anything about the corresponding E's and I's. If an E statement is false, its corresponding I statement is true, and we don't know anything about the corresponding A's and O's. If an I statement is false, its corresponding E is true, and we don't know anything about the corresponding A and O. If an O statement is false, its corresponding A statement is true, and we don't know anything about the corresponding E and I. There you go. I think that's all I have to say about immediate inferences. Yay! I think we're doing Venn diagrams in the next video, so yay, Venn diagrams. See you then.